an act of kindness can sometimes have the darkest consequences. For Dorothy Jane Scott, a quick trip to the hospital to help a co-worker in pain was a simple decision, but it was also her last. After seeing her friend to safety, she walked into the hospital parking lot to get her car and simply vanished into the night. What followed was a years-long campaign of psychological torture against her family, orchestrated by a phantom caller who knew every chilling detail of her disappearance. This is the story of a devoted mother, her obsessive stalker, and the questions that still echo more than 40 years later. It started with a voice on the phone, a man's voice. It sounded familiar, yet Dorothy couldn't place it. For months, this anonymous caller terrorized the 32-year-old single mother. He told her he loved her, then, in the same breath, threatened to kill her. He told her he was always watching. One day, he left a single dead rose on the windshield of her car. But his final call was the most chilling of all. He promised her, "When I get you alone, I will cut you up into bits so no one will ever find you." Just a few weeks later, on the night of May 28, 1980, he made good on that promise. Section 1. An ordinary night. The evening started out as just another ordinary night. Dorothy, a dedicated secretary and mother to her 4-year-old son, Sean, was at a staff meeting at the head shop where she worked. She was known as a quiet, devout Christian whose life revolved around her son and her family. During the meeting, she saw her co-worker, Conrad Bostron, was clearly in pain. His arm was red and swollen from what looked like a nasty spider bite. Worried about him, Dorothy and another co-worker, Pam Head, offered to drive him to the emergency room at UC Irvine Medical Center. It was a simple act of compassion, a quick detour before she headed home. She dropped Sean off with her parents, telling them she wouldn't be long. She had no idea it was the last time she would ever see him. At the hospital, Conrad was treated for the bite. Once he had his prescription, Dorothy told Conrad and Pam to wait for her by the exit, while she went to get her white Toyota station wagon from the far end of the parking lot. They watched her walk out into the darkness, expecting her to pull up just a few moments later. That was the last time anyone saw Dorothy Jane Scott alive. Section 2. The vanishing. Minutes ticked by. Then, her car's headlights sliced through the dark, accelerating straight for them. But something was wrong. Instead of slowing down, the car raced right past the hospital entrance. The high beams were on, blinding Pam and Conrad, making it impossible to see who was behind the wheel. They couldn't tell if it was Dorothy driving, or if someone else was in control. Confused, they at first figured she must have had an emergency with her son and rushed off. But as 1 hour stretched into 2, a deep sense of dread settled in. They alerted hospital security, then made the terrifying call to Dorothy's parents. Her parents confirmed their worst fear. Dorothy never came home. She was officially reported missing. Just hours later, around 4:30 in the morning, her Toyota station wagon was found in a remote alley about 10 miles from the hospital, completely engulfed in flames. But of Dorothy, there was no sign. She had vanished. Section 3. The torment begins. At first, police asked the family to keep Dorothy's disappearance quiet, hoping to avoid any interference with their investigation. But about a week later, the real terror began. The phone rang at Jacob and Vera Scott's home. When Vera answered, a man's voice on the other end said, "I've got her," and hung up. And that was just the beginning of his cruel campaign. For the next 4 years, the same man called them, almost every Wednesday afternoon, usually when Dorothy's mother was home alone. Sometimes he'd claim he still had Dorothy. Other times, he'd taunt her, saying he'd killed her. The calls were always just short enough to prevent police from tracing them, leaving the family trapped in a cycle of hope and despair. This caller knew things only the killer could know. In June 1980, after the Orange County Register published a story on the case, he called the paper's editor. He told him, "I killed her. I killed Dorothy Scott. She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. I killed her." To prove he wasn't lying, he shared 2 details the police had kept secret: that Conrad Bostron had been suffering from a spider bite, and that Dorothy had changed her black scarf to a red one that night. He also made a bizarre claim that Dorothy had called him from the hospital, a lie her co-worker Pam Head immediately shot down, confirming she was with Dorothy the entire time. The calls to the Scott family suddenly stopped in April 1984 when Dorothy's father, Jacob, answered the phone. The caller, apparently startled to hear a man's voice, mumbled, "Wrong number," and hung up. For a while, the torment paused. The cruelty inflicted on this family is almost impossible to comprehend. Before we get to the grim discovery that came next, if you find this story as haunting as I do, please take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us give a voice to victims like Dorothy Scott and ensures they're never forgotten. Section 4. A Grim Discovery. On August 6, 1984, 4 years after Dorothy vanished, their agonizing wait for answers came to a horrific end. A construction worker discovered burned human remains near Santa Ana Canyon Road, just yards from the spot where her car had been found. Alongside the skeletal remains lay a turquoise ring and a watch. The watch had stopped at 12:30 a.m. on May 29, 1980, about an hour after her car was seen speeding away from the hospital. Dental records confirmed the unthinkable. It was Dorothy. Because of the condition of the remains, an autopsy couldn't determine the exact cause of death. Disturbingly, the partial remains of a dog were also found nearby, an odd detail that has led to speculation about bizarre rituals, though nothing has ever been proven. The case was now officially a homicide, but the calls weren't over. Soon after the discovery hit the news, the phone rang one last time at the Scott home. Vera answered. It was him. The familiar, haunting voice asked a single, cruel question. "Is Dorothy home?" Then he hung up and was never heard from again. Section 5. The Suspects. The case is still cold, but over the years a few key persons of interest have emerged. The most obvious suspect has always been the anonymous caller. Investigators have always been convinced that the caller and the killer are the same person, given his intimate knowledge of the crime. His motive, if you believe his confession, was pure, jealous rage. He seemed to believe he was in a relationship with Dorothy and saw her act of kindness as cheating. Dorothy herself had told her mother she recognized the stalker's voice but couldn't place it, suggesting it was someone she knew, at least casually. Others were briefly considered. Dennis Terry, the father of Dorothy's son, was quickly cleared. He had a rock-solid alibi with receipts proving he was in Missouri when she disappeared. Mike Butler, a man known for his instability and involvement in the occult, was also looked at. Dorothy's son, Sean, has said he personally believes Butler was the man responsible, claiming he was obsessed with his mother. Butler certainly would have known her routine, but he was never a primary suspect and passed away in 2014, taking any secrets he had to the grave. Finally, there's John Kikola, the owner of the shop where Dorothy worked as a bookkeeper. Years after her murder, he was indicted for tax evasion, which sparked a theory. What if Dorothy had uncovered his crimes and he killed her to keep her quiet? The biggest problem with this theory, however, is the randomness of it all. There's no way Kikola could have planned for a spider bite and an impromptu hospital trip, making it a very unlikely scenario for a premeditated hit. A voice in the dark. More than 40 years later, the man who murdered Dorothy Jane Scott is still just a voice on a phantom phone call. Who was he? A co-worker? A distant acquaintance? Or just a stranger who grew obsessed from afar? His knowledge of details that were never made public suggests a chilling closeness to the crime. He was a ghost who forced his way into Dorothy's life, stole it from her, and then spent years tormenting her family without ever facing justice. Dorothy's parents, Jacob and Vera, passed away in 1994 and 2002, never getting to see justice for their daughter. Her son, Sean, grew up without a mother, his life forever marked by this senseless violence. The case of Dorothy Jane Scott is a grim reminder of how obsession can curdle into evil, and of the pain a family endures when a crime remains unsolved. Her last known act was one of kindness, and for that, she was met with unimaginable cruelty. If you have any information about the murder of Dorothy Jane Scott, please contact the Orange County Sheriff's Department. After all this time, her family still deserves answers. Thank you for listening. This is Signal 49. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and keep watching the shadows.